Joan Quinn, a member of the California Arts Council and Beverly Hills Arts Commission, is the former West Coast editor of Andy Warhol's Interview magazine and society editor of the Herald Examiner. Her cover stories can be read in Venice and Detour magazines, and she is a contributing editor to California Apparel News. For the next half hour, Joan will bring you inside news and views on society, art, film, and the exhilarating worlds of these multifaceted people. Here is Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to Joan Quinn, Etc. Our first guest today is Marsha Bentley Hale. She's an archivist. Her company, Vidi Vici, digs into the past. And while searching the past, Marsha found herself interested in mannequins. So interested, in fact, that she founded a mannequin museum. It's not a building yet, it's still in progress and in development. But before we talk about the museum, Marsha, tell us how you define a mannequin.
A mannequin, okay. I think that there are about 5 different aspects of mannequins. You have fashion mannequins, dress forms, you have auto crash dummies, you have medical figures. They are human surrogates used rather than humans for also fashion, as in display. So you also have the display mannequin.
How did mannequins actually come into being or come into play, and when was it?
Well, if we go back to the Egyptian times, about 1350 BC,
Wow.
you had dress forms. A dress form of King Tut was uncovered when they opened the tomb in 1923. And then you go back to, say, the 16th century, and you'd find examples of dress forms used to, rather than hangers. Then you had fashion dolls as political gifts. And it really wasn't until probably about the 17th century that you had mannequins used in boutiques in Paris, but mostly those were for showing wigs.
So they've been with us a long time.
A while.
Very long. Why would anyone want to start a mannequin museum? Aren't there mannequins in the collections, the costume collections of museums across the country or in the world?
Surprisingly, no. If I might go into the evolution of why I found out that it was something important to do, I started photographing mannequins. And I wanted to write a little history on mannequins. So I went to the UCLA Research Library, could find nothing on the topic. So then I started contacting manufacturers in the US. They had nothing in their files. They'd throw out the old catalogs, even from the 40s.
The manufacturers of mannequins?
Yes. Okay, so then I started contacting museums. And for instance, I contacted the Smithsonian, and they said, well, we have a mannequin from the 40s in our basement. I contacted museums throughout Europe, and maybe they'd have one mannequin from the 20s. So I found something that needed to be researched.
Well, why were you interested in it? Why were you taking pictures in the first place?
Yes, I know. Actually, people saw me at midnight photographing the windows in Beverly Hills.
I see.
And they thought I was a little strange. But I was documenting the different types of human figures that you would see in the windows. At the time, the late 70s, people like Candy Pratt were back in New York. They were creating these windows that had stories. But I also saw that there were different types of plastic people. They had different expressions, different ethnic origins, possibly. And so I thought it would make a wonderful sociological study.
Simon Doonan also was doing windows in Los Angeles. He's now with Barney's and has created those wonderful windows as well. Were you following his windows?
Definitely, definitely.
We have so many things on the set. Maybe we should just go through and talk about these different types of mannequins, and we can talk more about what kind of pieces would go into a museum. Do we start with this wonderful piece behind me?
This particular figure is made by Pierre Iman in 1925. She was made in Paris, and one of the reasons I brought her here is to show what happened to the wax mannequins. They would actually melt in the windows, and her hand, as you can see, is kind of melted and crushed.
Just because of the heat?
Yes.
There, she's all...
Yes. So, well, there were different transitions in terms of materials and mannequins, but the artistry of Pierre Iman was exquisite. If you see her face, you know, she's with the real teeth and the glass eyes, and she had real hair at
She
one
had
time.
hair.
Yeah.
Is hair considered a part of the mannequin's body?
Sometimes the hair is part of the mannequin. Usually in wax mannequins, they actually would use a hot needle and put maybe 2 or 3 hairs in at a time.
Did she need a wig? Because she's set for a wig, it looks like.
Yes, apparently she's from a little bit later time period when they would use a wig so they could change the look of the hairstyle.
And since wax did not work very well, what material did they go into next?
Okay, well, wax for the time period did well. They were exquisite, they showed body attitude, but then they wanted to have something that was lightweight because wax was very heavy. So they had paper mache, and in the 20s you had deco figures that were made out of paper mache that were...
Is this a paper mache?
This figure, he is a cross between paper mache and the plaster. So he's in the 30s, the late 30s. He was paper mache with some plaster portions to him, but much lighter.
He lighter?
Much, much, much lighter. And this figure is paper mache from the...
Oh, that actually is.
She's from the Depression, around 1929, a little bit early 30s. They would try to save on materials, so she isn't a full figure. In other words, she's a relief figure.
But the hair becomes part of the mannequin, like the little child has his hair part of the mannequin. She has a sculpted head.
Right, it's the molded hair, so it would be molded right in, whereas you might have mannequins that would have a changeable wig.
But was that of the time,
Yes.
more or less? And they didn't use wigs then at that time.
There's always more than one thing going on at a time period. But
And these little
little
people in
figures,
front?
late 40s, early 50s, and they were actually manufactured by the Buster Brown Company. And
but they look real lightweight, and they look almost like blow-up toys.
they're made with the same method as dolls. And a few weeks ago, I was in Las Vegas, and I found their predecessors, same exact figures, but made in paper mache from a decade previous.
Why? How did that happen, do you think? The same figures, the same face? Why would that happen? Why would there be paper mache 10 years before, did you say?
Well, it's just the evolution of
But
materials.
the same face and the same everything?
It must have been something that their company, that represented their company. Again, that's something I need to research. There are so many directions you can do research.
Well, did mannequins actually change with the times, like the body? These
Absolutely.
people are not very well endowed, and yet the mannequins of today are more endowed as you go
Yes,
through.
well, say at the turn of the century you had females and males who were very rigid, and then in the teens the female would be very theatrical. Then in the 40s, the male and female figures had very square shoulders, almost like they were little army people. And when the men came back from World War II in America, all of a sudden you had these voluptuous female mannequins. I mean, they were just like, the guys are coming home. Let's get ready for them. And then in the 60s, you went to kind of a very thin, twiggy look at the end of the 60s, which kind
Flat
of
again?
went into anorexia. I mean, we had anorexic mannequins.
So they really do depict a lot of the times
Oh, absolutely.
of the eras.
We have very beautifully sculpted mannequins with a sense of musculature right now, both female and male.
Because of our
We're
body
gonna be
conscious,
fit.
fitness craze.
Yes.
When a company makes a mannequin nowadays, how would they start?
Okay.
Just tell us a little bit
The top
about.
companies, they will sculpt from a live mannequin, a live model mannequin.
What are
also.
some of the companies around?
Oh, we have Dector, we have Wolf and Vine, Griniker, we have Adele Rootstein.
So there are a lot of people making them.
Many. Well, there's many, but still, it's everybody kind of knows everybody.
So give us a little quick process of what they do. They sculpt from a live model.
Okay, for instance, the sculptress Tanya Regier, she will have a live model, and I'm certain with other people from the company, they will figure out what the body attitudes will be. So this person will actually have to stand in different positions because they're going to sculpt it in several body attitudes. So once they've decided on the look and the body attitudes, the model will stay there for about a week working with Tanya, and then they'll make molds and, you know.
And what material do they use now?
Usually fiberglass, but then there's other types of plastics that they're using.
Give us a price range of what a new mannequin would be.
Well,
just a range.
Okay, you're going to go between 500 and 1,000, depending on what type of company.
And what about mannequins that you find wherever you find them? I don't know where you find them. Where do you find them to collect?
It's getting difficult. My first focus actually was finding all of the documentation. All the rare photos, the old articles. I mean, you might walk into a basement in Milan, Italy. I found photographs of American mannequins from the 40s and 50s.
Oh, so that's what you used for your documentation. Then how do you find the actual piece?
That is tough. I actually need to do a major mannequin hunt and just crawl in basements, I guess.
What is the most interesting? How many pieces are set up right now for the museum? Do you have a lot of?
The collection's actually small. The base collection is only about 150 because we have not put into our collection the contemporary figures yet, and we really need to get out and hunt. As I said, the basis of the Mannequin Museum in development has been the documentation of what existed.
I see.
Because without knowing what existed, then you don't know what you have. And that's what I've put the money into first.
What's the most interesting piece in the collection right now?
I would say one of the Pierre Iman figures.
And this is what?
That's a Pierre Iman, but one that is in much nicer shape.
And what does it look like?
Well, just she's from the teens and just exquisite, you know, has those kind of theatrical.
Is she wax?
Hands. Wax,
She's
yes.
wax.
Yes.
And do you have any other plans other than this museum?
Well, yes. I mean, my creative side is working on a theme park ride, but.
A theme park ride for mannequins?
Well, no, yeah, they're going to have fun. No, the focus is creating a really pristine, wonderful collection, and attach. If we don't get our own building, then we would like to attach ourselves with another museum.
That'd be great. We'll look forward to it. I think it's a fascinating thing, and all of our viewers out there, start looking for mannequins and call us and tell us if you have any old ones. Thanks, Marsha Hale, for being with us today.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with you on Joan Quinn, etc. Don't go away. Hi, we're back, and I'm with Carol Connors. Carol is a singer, composer, lyricist, and writer. She's a native Angelino, and it's hard to believe, but when she was still in high school, she borrowed $10 from her parents to make a demo with a classmate. That person was Phil Spector, who turned out to be one of the greatest names in music. The song was "To Know Him Is to Love Him," and Carol sang the lead with the teddy bears. The song sold 3 million copies here for this high school girl. And she's been on the upward swing ever since. Carol co-wrote the lyrics for the Rocky theme. She's written music for TV and films, and she's been nominated for the Oscars, the Grammys, the Golden Globes, and for 5 Emmys. After 5 Emmys, Carol, how can you complain that you didn't win?
Well, I'm beginning to feel like the Susan Lucci of the music industry. Am I the Susan Lucci? I mean, no, one doesn't complain. I mean, it's such an honor to be nominated. And when they didn't call my name, there is a very brief moment where your heart goes down to the bottom of your shoes. I mean, where you go, oh, why wasn't it me?
But it is an honor 5 times.
It's an honor to be nominated. It's just an honor, not only to be nominated, but it's your peers. Mm-hmm. And because it's your peers, they're saying, we think that this song that Carol Connors and Jimmy Haskell wrote, because I wrote it with my partner Jimmy, we think this is worthy of a nomination.
And what was the song?
It was called Love Without Strings, and it was produced by Bob Hope, Linda Hope, his daughter, and Arbus and Ross. Helene Ross, who is one of my best friends, actually brought me into the project. And it was called Morris the Cat Salutes America's Pets.
So it was great because you love cats. You have
Love, they are my life.
Well, they have funny names. What do you call them?
Well, I have two Abyssinians, and I call them M and M. But really, they're minstrel and maestro, major and minor.
Of course, they have to be music-oriented,
and
right?
they're like two macho guys. I mean, we're talking heavy-duty macho guys here.
So it was easy for you to write Morris the Cat, since you've been around cats so
Well,
much.
it was easy to get the feelings of what I really believed I felt. I mean, I live alone, so I was able to look at these beautiful little faces that I feel God has touched, because I think God touches all of us, and these beautiful painted little faces, and they would just stare at me, and I was able to take from them, without them ever speaking to me, even though there are times I think they do speak, I was able to take a sort of a non-communicative type feelings of what they were feeling and I was feeling, and turn it into the song, which was about unconditional love.
So
It's called Love Without Strings.
And is this what they give you when you
Not
went
exact, well, close. They give you like a sheet of white paper. First you get the call, and you bounce off the walls for about, 72 hours. Then you get a sheet of paper in which you get to, I permaplaque mine. Some people actually, I think they put them in a frame. And you put it on your wall, and then you pray. And then when you don't, you get over it, and you go on to the next day of what you're doing, and hopefully you're doing a new project.
So sing it for us.
Right now?
Will you?
This
Please.
instant?
Yeah, I hate to put you on the spot, but
You are.
But you are. So good.
You got it. Okay. I have to stand. You have to stand when you sing,
Okay.
because your singing teachers would have a kitten. No pun intended.
watch. I'll be
Okay.
your
It's
audience.
called Love Without Strings. And thank you, Connie Stevens, for this outfit. You talked me into it. Okay. Maestro, please. Once your little furry friend becomes your friend, he'll always be there forever, guarding all your dreams until tomorrow, loving you through all the joys and sorrow, love without strings, perfectly free, love without strings, you and me, love without strings. The best thing in the world. When your little friend has eyes for only you, angels smile from above, and loneliness just flies out the window, 'cause everybody needs a friend to love. Love without strings, perfectly free. Love without strings, you and me. Love without strings is the best thing in the world. Love without strings is the best thing in the world.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I really,
Oh, thank you.
and thank you, Jimmy Haskell, for writing it with me.
I think that's so great for you to just stand up and sing. That's what a true artist can do.
I'm a wreck.
I'm fascinated with that beautiful little girl voice. It's really beautiful. How did the teddy bears come about?
Well, what happened was Phil Spector, who went on to become the genius of rock and roll music, was just inducted into the Hall of Fame. He was dating my best friend. And we were in junior high school.
What schools were they?
Louis Pasteur,
Yep.
junior high. He was at Fairfax High School.
I can't believe
And
that.
so, I wasn't born here, but I've been here since I was 3.5. And I would be singing in the hall, singing at the ice cream truck, singing in my classes, singing in study hall, and singing in the shower, as Bill Conti knows from Rocky. And he said, I love your voice. He said, do you have $10? I said, are you crazy? I don't even have money for milk. So he said, well, if you can get together $10, you can come in and cut a record with us. So I went to my mom and dad and I said, do you have $10? And they said, yes. I said, may I have it? And they said, well, for what? Because in those days, $10 was $10. So they gave me the $10 because I screamed, I yelled, I ranted, I got the $10. And we went in and cut To Know Him Is to Love Him. Now, you must understand that I had never been in front of a microphone outside of doing things in school. And when I was a kid, my sister and I would do little shows for the neighborhood. And the next thing I knew, 2 takes. We did one for Balance, Stan Ross at Gold Star, which is one of the most famous studios of all time today. He was the engineer. Sandy Nelson had never played drums before. He played drums on it. We did 2 takes, one for Balance, one for the actual song. Walked out of the studio in 20 minutes, and the song went on to sell 3 million records.
I think that attests to Phil's great eye and ear, but also to your talent. I mean, it's a natural talent with you. You've worked with great composers, Conti, David Shire,
Marvin Hamlish,
Marvin Hamlish, yeah.
Michel Legrand.
How do you get together with them, and how does the collaboration work?
Well, you know, sometimes your agent puts you together. Sometimes like my dream was to write with some of these people because these people were quite established, except Bill wasn't at the time. And
that was your big...
Well, that was our first thing. And I was starving. I mean, I was down to my last $200. I know, but that was it. I had to pay my rent. I lived in a cave.
And that was Rocky. And you said that bought your house.
It did. It did. And Bill Conti came to my home, and Ann Robbins and I wrote the lyrics together. 30 little words, but we really wrote an entire song. But John Avildsen saw the scene of Rocky running up those steps, and at that moment, he could go the distance, he could win, he could fly. And when he put his hands up, when Sly went like that, and it went into slow motion, you felt that he could win.
The music, too,
Yes.
built up. And when I said you've been soaring upward ever since,
Thank you.
feel that in that music, in those words.
Well, I feel that it captured the moment of that film. I mean, Gonna Fly Now. He was trying hard, he went the distance, and he could fly. He could do anything. And in my mind, we can all do anything if we set our heart.
How do you sit down with someone like that? Who takes charge?
It's not a, I don't think it's a matter of taking charge. I think it's a matter of ideas just tumbling out of you one after musically, because lots of times I do write music. So it's musically and lyrically, and not being afraid or ashamed to say something stupid, because you've got to get past that.
But what do? You start out and he says, here's the music, and you say, here are my words, or you say, I'll start with the words, or...
Well, in that one, there was a concept. He sat down at the piano and went,
see.
bum, bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, ba, bum, bum, bum.
I see.
And I looked at him and I said, what are we going to write to that?
I see.
But that was that one. I mean, like on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, which I wrote with Albert Hammond and Dionne Warwick, and we all did music, all did lyric, and she sang the song. I had bumped into Robin Leach at the Victoria Principal Tennis Tournament, and I said, do you have a song called Champagne Wishes and Caviar Dreams? And he said, no. And I said, are you crazy? It's a great title. He said, then write it. I said, we just may do that. So the title was there.
I see.
We knew what the title was. And, in a land of make-believe, dun, 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 dun. And when you see the show, it flows with the show.
You were also talking about being inspired by certain places. I know you just came back from Mexico.
Well, I went to a place thanks to this wonderful little lady called Lucia Mara, called Avondero. And it's where the monarch butterflies go to migrate. Billions and billions, not 6, not 10, not millions, billions
Really?
of butterflies. It is like 80 miles west of Mexico City. You land in Mexico City and you say, get me out of here. And within 1.5 hours, you are in one of the most beautiful places I have ever been in.
So did you write song?
Well,
words, music?
I came up with an idea there. They think of their place as a land of dreams and a face of love. And that's sort of what was told to me, not maybe in those exact words. And there was no piano there. Lucia, get a piano. Juan Carlos, please. Because I intend to come back with this one, I hope. And all of a sudden, I knew what the song was about. I went on a nature hike to the top of the mountain, and I knew what it was about. And those places are very important. Like I'm going to go to Hawaii soon, to a place called the Plantation Spa, but with Barbie Benton, because we're sports nuts. But you need to get away and get uncluttered. You got to get away from the smog and the people and retreat yourself into an area where you can find yourself again.
And that really helps you.
Absolutely.
And we're going to leave right now so that you can get away.
Oh, no, are we done?
We're done.
No, I refuse to be done. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. You've been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us, and thanks for being with Carol Connors. Bye.